Divorce secrets. Today, Nicole Kidman filed for divorce from her husband of 19 years. Country star Keith Urban.
It began quietly. No headlines, no statement, just absence. Nicole Kidman made her first public appearance since the split. A familiar smile, a familiar grace, but behind it something softer, almost weightless. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace, but from acceptance. Keith Urban said nothing. For weeks, the man who built his life on melody chose silence. No interviews, no songs, just the stillness of someone learning how to breathe again without another heartbeat beside him. When he finally stepped back on stage, the silence cracked. Not with anger, but with something sharper. Weary honesty. In the middle of a song he'd sung for years, one word changed. One pause lingered too long, and the world felt it. It wasn't an announcement. It was confession through music. A man saying goodbye in a language only he could speak. Fans replayed the clip on loop, searching for meaning, for emotion, for the version of truth that fits the sound. Was this heartbreak, closure, or just a song finding new life after loss? No one could say, but everyone could feel it, because sometimes the loudest statement after love ends is silence, and the courage to let that silence sing when the headlines finally arrived. They felt almost too quiet for what they carried. 19 years, 2 decades of love, distance, redemption, all distilled into 3 words: irreconcilable differences. The phrase appeared in court filings from Tennessee, as if love could ever be summarized by legal language. But behind that sentence was a lifetime of shared mornings, songs written in hotel rooms, letters exchanged between flights, the kind of story that once felt unbreakable until it wasn't. Friends said it didn't happen suddenly. The distance had been growing for years, slow unraveling that neither could stop. Keith moved out quietly, setting up his own place in Nashville. To outsiders, it was a move for space. To those who knew them, it was the beginning of goodbye. Nicole handled it the only way she knew how, with composure. No public statements, no accusations, just grace. She walked red carpets with her daughters by her side, smiling for cameras, protecting them from a world that devours heartbreak for content. She didn't want this, a friend told people, but she accepted it with dignity. Her silence became its own kind of strength, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Keith's silence, though, felt different. His was not calm, it was searching. He disappeared from the spotlight, retreating into the one place where he'd always faced his truth, the studio. No press, no statements, just a man and his guitar, turning pain into melody, turning loss into rhythm, turning heartbreak into something that could be survived. Because when love ends for the world to see, you can't hide from the noise. But if you're lucky, you can still find a song quiet enough to heal in. After the papers were filed, Keith disappeared. The man who once filled arenas with sound now lived in silence, a guitar resting by his side like an old friend who understood without needing to ask. Nashville nights grew longer, the studio lights burned later, and somewhere between midnight and dawn, the songs began to change. He wasn't chasing hits anymore. He was chasing truth, the kind that hides between chords and only comes out when your heart's too tired to lie. Friends said he barely spoke. He'd sit for hours, looping the same melody until it broke, then stitching it back together again. It wasn't the first time he'd fought the darkness. Years ago, Nicole had pulled him out of it, out of addiction, out of chaos, out of himself. She was the calm to his storm, the quiet reminder that even broken things can still be loved. But this time, he had to do it alone. Rehab couldn't fix heartbreak. No therapy could teach him how to live without the one who once saved his life. And yet, in that quiet struggle, something remarkable happened. The music softened, the lyrics deepened. Each note carried the weight of a man relearning how to be whole. Gone were the glittering anthems and perfect rhymes. What remained were raw confessions disguised as songs, about time, about love. It wasn't his downfall, it was his return. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't where you end, it's where you start hearing your own soul again. It happened quietly. No press, no announcement, just a concert. The stage lights dimmed and Keith Urban stepped into the glow like a man returning to himself. For months, he had said nothing about the divorce. No statements, no interviews, just silence. Heavy, deliberate, necessary. But that night, he let the music speak. Halfway through a song he'd sung 1,000 times, he paused. A heart heartbeat, a breath, and then one word changed. The audience didn't react at first, but it hit like lightning for those who were listening. The crowd went still. Phones came up, and before the song even ended, the clip was already spreading across the internet. Looped, dissected, slowed down, replayed. Was it a mistake? A message? A confession? No one knew, but everyone felt it. That one lyric became a headline. That one pause became proof. Proof that the silence had finally cracked. He didn't name her. He didn't have to. The voice told the story for him. After that night, fans began to notice something strange. The love songs, the ones that once defined him, were quietly disappearing. Songs written in the glow of a love story the world thought would last forever. For nearly a decade, the fighter had closed every concert, a promise sung between two souls who had fought their way back from the edge. Nicole had even appeared in the music video. Together, they had made love look invincible. But after the divorce, that song vanished from his set lists. No farewell performance, no final verse, just silence where it used to live. Instead, Keith began performing older songs, tracks filled with longing, solitude, reflection. The shift was subtle, but it changed everything. Gone was the warmth of the romantic showman. In his place stood a man singing for himself again. Fans noticed the pattern. He's erasing her, some said. He's freeing himself, others replied. But maybe it wasn't either. Maybe he was just learning that sometimes the songs that once saved you can start to hurt when you sing them again. So he let them go, because even love stories deserve to rest. And sometimes the bravest thing an artist can do is stop performing the past. It began with a clip, 30 seconds of music, a lyric change, a pause that wasn't there before. Within hours, it was everywhere. What once lived in private had become a global mirror. Hashtags bloomed overnight. Songs fans became detectives. Every silence between verses was treated like a clue. And through it all, Keith never explained. He just kept playing, song after song, show after show, as if his silence was the only answer the world needed. Before the lights, before the fame, before the noise that comes with being adored, there was just a boy in Queensland, strumming an old guitar in a room too small for dreams that big. Keith Urban grew up on music and motion. His father sold stereo equipment. His mother believed in miracles, and between them they raised a son who carried both, a love for sound and a quiet fear of silence. Money was scarce, but melody was endless. Music wasn't a choice. It was escape, a way to drown out the arguments, the uncertainty, the feeling that happiness was always one song away. By his teens, Keith was playing in dim bars, singing to strangers, chasing applause like oxygen. He didn't want fame. He wanted to feel enough. When success finally found him, it didn't come gently. Fame amplified everything. Behind every standing ovation was a man still running from his own shadow. And then came Nicole, elegant, grounded, everything he wasn't and everything he needed. She didn't just love him, she steadied him. In her presence, the chaos dimmed, the noise softened. For the first time, Keith wasn't performing. He was home, but even the calmest seas hide storms. Love that deep doesn't stay effortless forever. Over the years, dependence became weight, gratitude became fear, and the man who once said she saved his life found himself terrified of who he might become without her. So when she left, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was identity loss. And in the silence that followed, Keith did what he had always done. He turned pain into music. He didn't fight it. He didn't numb it. He faced it, note by note, lyric by lyric, until the ache turned into art. Because sometimes the truest version of a person isn't who they are in love, but who they become when love is gone. Just enough to keep the lesson, but not the pain. In the months that followed, Keith Urban stopped searching for closure. He started searching for balance. The spotlight still followed him, but his heart began to drift somewhere smaller, home. Between tour stops, he'd fly back to Nashville just to wake his daughters before school, to make breakfast, to exist in the quiet rhythm of ordinary love. They didn't care about headlines. They cared about pancakes and laughter, and the father who still showed up even when the world thought he was falling apart. Those close to him said fatherhood saved him twice. The first time when it gave him purpose. The second when it reminded him that love doesn't vanish. It just takes on new shapes. On stage, he no longer sang for applause. He sang to feel whole. The cracks in his voice weren't flaws anymore. They were evidence. Proof that the man behind the microphone was still human. He spoke less in interviews, but when he did, his words carried calm instead of ache. "The best thing I ever did," he said once softly, "was learn to stay still." That stillness became his rebirth, not the loud kind that demands celebration, the quiet kind that rebuilds you piece by piece until you recognize yourself again. He wasn't trying to be the man he used to be. He was learning how to live as the man he'd become. The headlines said he was moving on, but the music said something else. In its place stood something raw, a quiet acceptance that even the most beautiful stories have to end somewhere. He wasn't exposing Nicole, he was exposing himself. In the end, there were no villains, no heroes, just two people who had loved each other deeply and learned how to love themselves again when the story changed. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban never turned their pain into spectacle. They let it dissolve quietly into art, into stillness, into the kind of grace that doesn't need to be explained. Because love doesn't always leave in anger. Sometimes it just fades, gently, like music at the end of a song. And when it does, what remains isn't heartbreak. It's peace, because sometimes love doesn't collapse. It simply exhales, and what's left behind isn't tragedy, it's truth. Here at Lux Reich, we don't chase gossip. We chase meaning, the untold stories hidden behind the headlines, the quiet truths that fame tries to silence.